we were discussing about process of research, and we just examined the role of exploration in research. The second purpose of research is description. This is one of the goals of the research, that is to describe a social phenomenon about which researcher has a good idea. The research of this type is known as descriptive research. The primary purpose is to paint a picture using words or numbers and to present a profile or classification of types or an outline of steps to answer questions such as who, why, when, where and how. Here, the researcher begins with a well-defined subject and conducts research to describe it accurately. It presents picture by giving details about types of people or social activities. Example could be a research where a researcher finds out that 20% primary teachers use punishment in classroom in India. So most data collection methods used here are survey, field, research, content analysis, historical comparative research, etc. Another goal of research is explanation. When you have a description of an issue, the next step is to ask why things are the way they are. The goal here is to explain why events occur and to build, elaborate, extend or test a theory. To answer the why question, why things the way they are, the researcher builds on exploratory and descriptive research and moves ahead to identify the reasons of why something occurred. So basically one is looking for causes and reasons here. So the example where 20% primary teachers were seen using punishment in classroom, an explanatory researcher will find out why, what was the reason for using punishment by those 20% teachers. So explanatory research uses multiple strategies to develop a novel explanation or sometimes competing explanation. Social research can be divided into two, the basic research and applied research. Basic research is also known as pure or academic research. Applied research, as the term implies, is application of the research in real life world. Applied research can be divided into evaluation research, action research, and social impact assessment research. According to Kallinger, basic research is application to increase knowledge without regard to social usefulness. So the idea is not to apply the knowledge to the real life world, but to accumulate data so that supports the existing theories and hypotheses. It advances fundamental knowledge about how the world works and builds on the theoretical explanation. So basic or pure research involves developing and testing theories, and researcher finds it intellectually challenging to take up this kind of research, so this research is done. It typically refers to theory-driven hypothesis testing science driven by a quest for fundamental understanding. It may become the source of most tools of the research that applied researchers use. Example, it may be involved in developing a sampling technique for a particular situation or a tool to measure level of stress. Some of the examples of basic research in psychology could be the effect of stress on students' academic, emotional and social well-being. So when one is trying to study this, one is trying to actually conduct what is known as basic research. The findings from these theoretical explorations may pave the way for future research aimed at addressing particular issues. Next, we have applied research, which in psychology is motivated more by a desire to solve practical problems. It offers practical solution to concrete problems, and the data here is used directly for real-world applications. It is driven by immediate or specific needs of clinicians, teachers, counselors, decision makers, and practitioners. It is a quick, small-scale study with practical results, and people use it in short terms. Some of the example of applied research would be investigating which treatment approach is the most effective for reducing anxiety in students, or studying if indigenous thought system can increase nature connectedness in children. There are three types of applied research. Evaluation research, which is conducted to determine how well a program or policy is working. Example, if I have to examine the teaching methods and its effectiveness in school, we will move ahead with a question that is experiential learning method effective for children, because it has been recently proposed that experiential learning method should be undertaken by teachers. So mostly it is used in schools, hospitals, business organizations, large non-profit agencies. Research techniques used is mostly survey and field. However, this type of research suffers from certain limitations. In evaluation research, we see that raw data is rarely publicly available. So the research is done and it remains with the researcher and the concerned other researchers. It lacks focus on people's lives. So even when I'm exploring the experiential learning method and its impact, I'm not paying attention to other stakeholders like children and teachers. Second important type of applied research is action research. This is a form of applied research which aims at facilitating social change or attain a value-oriented political social goal. It is not value neutral. It abolishes lines between research and social action. It is about active participation of those who are facing the problem. So the researcher along with the participants together lead to the findings of the research. It is about improving conditions by certain social awareness, and research focuses on power with a goal of empowerment. So it is believed that knowledge develops through experience of socio-political actions. Those being studied participate in the research process, and researchers with specific perspectives like environmental or feminist approach generally undertake this kind of research. It serves dual purpose. It brings about social change as well as to ideas to contribute to the advancement of knowledge. The goal of action research, therefore, is to democratize the knowledge creation process. Professional researchers and local participants, as already mentioned, co-generate knowledge and have joint ownership over research findings. The third type of applied research is social impact assessment research. This is done to estimate the likely consequences of a planned change required by government agencies. It is used for planning or making choices among alternative policies. Example could be ability of a local hospital to respond to pandemic situation, or changing in housing for new highway construction. So these could be social impact assessment researches that one may undertake, and it is done for the requirement of the government agencies. Now we look at some of the differences between basic and applied research. So we will compare and contrast them on certain parameters. Number one, if we look at the purpose of research, the purpose of basic research is creation of new knowledge, whereas that of applied research is solution to a practical problem. So whereas one is focusing on the creation of knowledge, another one is more oriented towards applying that knowledge. Motivation for undertaking research in basic research is intellectual curiosity and advancing knowledge. In applied research, it is commitment to promote public welfare. Primary audience for basic research are scientific community, that is other researchers, whereas primary audience for applied research include practitioners, participants or supervisors, which may be non-researchers. If we look at the scope of basic research, it has a wider scope as compared to applied research, which has a more specific scope, because we have already seen that it is more problem oriented, seeking solution for a specific concern or issue is the idea in applied research. So it has a specific scope. Success in basic research is indicated by publication and impact on knowledge and scientists' feedback. However, in applied research, success is indicated by direct applications to address a specific problem. As far as the autonomy of researcher is concerned, it is very high in basic research, but in applied research, it is low and moderate, because the researcher is tied to the problem and finding a solution to a real-life problem. Evaluators of basic research are other researchers and peers, and for applied research, the evaluators are practitioners, supervisors, and other concerned people. Now we move to the treatment of time in research. So research has a time dimension. Treatment of time, therefore, is another important dimension on which social research varies. We have studies which give a snapshot of a single fixed time point and allow you to analyze in detail, whereas other studies move in time, allowing you to follow events, people, and social relations over a period of time. Quantitative research is divided into these two groups generally, a single point in time versus multiple time points. On one hand, we have cross-sectional research which examines information of many cases at one point in time. So, snapshot approach of the social world is undertaken in cross-sectional research. Example, if we want to study depression in elderly, we can study in a given population at one point of time. It is usually simplest and least costly way of conducting research. It can be exploratory, descriptive, or explanatory, but most consistent with descriptive research. There are some of the disadvantages of cross-sectional research, that it cannot capture social processes or change. Obviously, since it is focusing on one point of time, there is no way it can capture the flow of time in terms of changes that are coming in our society. So, features of the cross-sectional research we have already seen. Now we move to another type of research taking time into consideration. This is longitudinal research. This type of research examines information from many units or cases across more than one point in time. It is more complex and costly, but more powerful, especially when examining social change. Suppose we want to study emotional intelligence and self-regulation in children. So we see that self-regulated children can be followed up till late adulthood and see that how emotional intelligence is high or low in these children. It is used by descriptive and explanatory research approaches. So different individuals are studied at different points of time. We have three types of longitudinal research. One is time series research. So we see that it can be further divided into three important types and taking time into consideration. In time series research, same type of information is collected on a group of people across multiple time periods. It is done to observe stability, change, and tracking conditions over time. This kind of research can provide an understanding of the underlying naturalistic process and the pattern of change over time. For example, if we see a study by Skog, which was conducted in 2003, we see that he documented the level of alcohol consumption and how it is associated with number of fatal accidents in Canada since 1950. So he continued his research for a number of years to bring this point that how the rate of accidents fell or rose because of alcohol consumption. Similarly, in another research, Davis used time series data to show change in American political social attitude from 1972 to 1987. So 42 items were assessed, like people's idea about crime, free speech, political, religion, race, etc. And they was seen that there was a general move towards more liberal positions in latter years of the research. Number 2 is panel study. This is another powerful type of longitudinal research which examines exactly the same people, group or organization across time periods. It is difficult to conduct though because it is costly and tracking same people over time becomes really difficult. People may not be available at all points. They may not be there. They cannot be located. We do not know where they have gone. So it is very difficult to conduct this type of research. Egerton, a researcher, had made use of panel study, and he studied link between civic engagement and higher education among young people in Great Britain, and this study took place for 9 years. He followed the same people from age of 17 when they had entered higher education till they turned 22, 23, and he compared level of social engagement to find their activity level. The third type of study is cohort study. This is a type of longitudinal study where a group of individuals, that is cohort, often sharing a common characteristic or experience, is followed over an extended period of time to study and track outcomes typically related to specific exposures or interventions. This is similar to panel study, but rather than following same exact people, the focus here is on cohort. What is a cohort? We will see that cases that share a common experience in a specified time period will be referred to as cohorts. Like birth cohorts are people who are born in the same year. Similarly, we can have people who retire in 1 or 2 year frame. So these people are known as cohorts. The 1970 British cohort study, which follows the lives of 17,198 people born in England, Scotland and Wales in a single week of 1970, is a very good example of cohort study. So coming back to the exploration as a goal of research, we see that the goal is to formulate more precise questions that future research can answer. So we have an example of a research by Lavoie in 2000 who explored what teens thought about violence in interpersonal relationship using qualitative method on 24 participants who were in the age group of 14 to 19 years. So the question that was answered here was what questions? By exploring the concepts of violence in these teens, we were trying to explore a particular concept or idea which was existing in a particular population. So exploratory research requires creativity, open-mindedness and flexibility. There are certain difficulties associated with exploratory research. Exploratory research rarely provides definitive answers. It is difficult to conduct as few guidelines are there to follow. So we know that since we are just exploring certain concepts or ideas and we do not have a clear-cut design to follow, the answers that we will get will not be definite ones. So we have to be prepared for taking anything as an answer and not look for solutions to certain specific research problems, because everything here seems to be potentially important. And also one thing that we should note is the direction of inquiry can change frequently. So we may move ahead and then come back to the same point because different peoples are given different opinions and concepts of the idea that we are trying to explore in research. In the descriptive research, where the primary purpose is to paint a picture using words or numbers, we know that mainly the researchers involved describe a particular phenomenon. There is an example of a research done in 1992 by McCabe, who studied cheating among US college students to see how they rationalized deviance. He conducted a survey over 6,000 students and found 2/3 accepted that they cheated during a major test. 6 major types of cheating was found, and it was justified that by the youth as the behavior using more neutralization strategies. So they had put the blames on others. The focus of descriptive research here was to answer how did it happen and who did it question. Why students neutralized cheating was the concern. So it was described here that how students use cheating and why they did it would be taken up by explanatory research. So when we already have a description of something, our next step is to ask why things are the way they are. So in the previous research on cheating, we would move ahead and explain the cause that was prevalent for indulging in such a behavior. For explanatory research, we have another example of a research conducted by Lee, who studied in 2004 the idea of contact. This was based on contact hypothesis, according to which why it was explored why people replace their negative stereotypes with positive ones towards out-group members after coming in contact with them. 14 measures were used and people taken were homeless people regarding whom the attitude and view of other people was tested. So there were several views which could be prevalent in the population, that is depending on their personal observation, personal interaction, having been homeless themselves, people would have different types of concepts regarding their perception of homeless people. Using telephonic survey, the data was collected and it was found that contact hypothesis was being supported, which means that people having greater contact with homeless people had favorable views towards them. So this is an example of the explanatory research.